What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday we did have that big Mortal Kombat 1 reveal as expected, and they gave us a ton of information, which includes pricing, release date, different editions to buy, and even a bit of a twist on the Mortal Kombat formula, which we'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about some recent comments from Sony in a Q&A with investors where they talked about Nintendo and maybe a strategy they can take from them going into the future. And we'll also be talking about Nvidia because they did unveil some of their newest video cards, and of course there's a bunch of controversy that happened right after. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure to hit that like button, helps that a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Sony and Project Leonardo, which is their accessibility controller, as they did unveil a bunch of details and new images around the controller itself and even the UI to go along with it. We can see this over on their PlayStation blog, where they say, developed in collaboration with accessibility experts, the Access controller will include a wide array of swappable button and stick caps so players can freely create different layouts that work for their unique strength, range of motion, and physical needs. Now, in this blog post, there are a ton of images around the controller itself, which the engineering and creativity that goes into something like this, it is genuinely impressive to see because it's going to be put in a bunch of different scenarios and setups, and it has to basically be malleable so it can fit into any of those situations. But then also the UI, it seems kind of like a play on what we have right now with the DualSense Edge controller, where you can do a bunch of things to it, but then kind of go on to the next level a bit here. And they also have an example showing Gran Turismo 7 being used with it. So really cool stuff here to have these accessibility controllers. We know Microsoft has their own accessibility controller. Sony has one here. We're still waiting for release date and pricing on it. And I guess at this point, it'd be good to see Nintendo also throw their hat in the ring and have an accessibility controller of some kind, but at least for now, there are multiple options seemingly on the market here soon, and that's good stuff all the way around. Also, we know that Microsoft has been going around making all these 10-year deals for Call of Duty, and one company they signed papers with was Nvidia. And it appears they're moving on that pretty quickly because we can see this post up over on news.xbox.com where they say Xbox debuts PC games to Nvidia Geforce Now members beginning today. In fact, now Gears 5 is available on Geforce Now, and starting May 25th, titles like Deathloop, Grounded, and Pentiment will be added in, and they do reference this saying this is just the beginning stage of our forward-thinking 10-year partnership with Nvidia to make PC games from Xbox Game Studios and Bethesda available to their Geforce Now members. So it is important to note that Geforce Now operates off of a library of games that you have purchased, so these would be games, say, in your Steam library that then you would stream using Geforce Now. And this was a concern that was brought up, obviously, around cloud gaming from the different regulators, especially with the CMA, and this is Microsoft, I think, just trying to get out in front of that a bit more, maybe put some more pressure on the CMA after the EU has now approved things and they're waiting for the FTC announcement, what their decision is all the way around. But hey, if anything, it's just good for Geforce Now users, so why not? Oh, and if you're someone who's been waiting for Pokemon Home compatibility with Scarlet and Violet, looks like that is coming up next week. We can see this posted over on Cerebi, where they say it has been confirmed that the Pokemon Home patch that will add Pokemon Scarlet and Violet connectivity on May 24th. With this, you'll be able to send Pokemon to and from the two apps, as well as send in Pokemon from prior games. When you do so, you will be getting special hidden ability Sprigatito, Fuecoco, and Quaxley. Now, it does have these different Pokemon have to already exist in that game to trade back and forth, but still, people have been asking for this home compatibility for a while. It took them a bit to get this done and out through way of a patch, but at least it's happening finally next week. So look forward to that if you've been hanging out kind of waiting for Scarlet and Violet to get that compatibility, and then hopefully it's not too much longer for them to do a performance patch of some kind, because that's still coming, right? And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Mortal Kombat 1. We did have that reveal trailer that aired yesterday, and for the most part, it was pretty good. It was just all CGI. There was no gameplay, and outside of that and the missed opportunity to call this Mortal Kombat 720, I'm pretty excited with what I saw here, but we did have a lot of information that kind of just got dropped out there, and there was one interesting point when it comes to the pricing around this game. But first, we can start with some of the trailer here as we go down the different pieces of information. They also have an entire FAQ page kind of going over this a bit more in detail. Now, the game is a reboot essentially, but it's also playing off of what happened with Mortal Kombat 11 and Aftermath, taking Liu Kang's ending. They say the game will introduce a reborn Mortal Kombat universe that has been created by the fire god Liu Kang, featuring reimagined versions of iconic characters as they've never been seen before, along with a new fighting system, game modes, bone-crushing finishing moves, and more. They do discuss who is developing Mortal Kombat 1, and from what I can tell, I think it's mostly the same studios that developed Mortal Kombat 11, because they have multiple platforms: the Xbox Series, PS5, PC through Steam, Epic Game Store, and the Nintendo Switch. So with PS5 and Xbox Series, NetherRealm is gonna go ahead and take care of that version of the game. They will also be doing oversight for the other two, which Q-Lock is developing for Steam and Epic Games on PC. Shiver Entertainment and Saber Interactive, they are handling the Switch version of the game, which for the most part, outside of some issues in the crypt and, well, I will say the visual downgrade from the other versions, the Switch version at least ran well enough when you were actually playing the game, so I would expect Mortal Kombat 1 to be very similar. When it comes to release date, we're looking at September 19th, so pretty quick turnaround time from announcement to release, about 4 months. They will have like a beta that they're going to run, this happening August 2023. That's going to be on the PS5 and the Xbox versions of the game if you have pre-ordered it. They did run down a quick list of some of the characters in here, and one in particular, probably a good idea to confirm them right away. So we have Liu Kang, Scorpion, Sub-Zero, Raiden, Kung Lao, Kitana, Mileena, which is the big one there for the history of Mortal Kombat 11 and some of the DLC. Yeah, a good thing that they went ahead and just confirmed Mileena is in the game seemingly from the get-go. Shang Tsung, Johnny Cage, and many others. Cameo Fighters appears to be kind of the twist on the gameplay here. They say they're a unique roster of partner characters to assist during matches, creating expanded gameplay possibilities for players. These characters are chosen separately from the main roster of fighters, which I assume means you're gonna pick Sub-Zero, for example, and then some other partner character to go along with them, which maybe they'll interject themselves into the match if you press a button, kind of like, I don't know, like Marvel versus Capcom or something. I guess some could heal you, others could be defensive, others offensive. And the interesting thing about this, as they mentioned, they're separate from the main roster. I almost wonder if this is a way for them to kind of expand their guest characters a bit, because, well, not every publisher or rights holder really cares necessarily about their character going through the ringer with all these fatalities. Some do. So in that case, you could have a character from a franchise be in Mortal Kombat without getting their head ripped off. But the part that was pretty interesting here is the pricing. Now, yes, they have different editions. They have the big special edition one for like $120 or something, another one for $250, which is the statue stuff. But the base price on this game is $70. Okay, sure, the PS5 and the Xbox Series, right? Well, it's $70 on the Switch. And it's interesting because we just had The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom come out at $70. This first, big $70 game on the Switch. Now we have a third-party game showing up from day one at $70, which I do wonder if that means Mortal Kombat 1 will just be completely on the cartridge, because 11, if you remember, you had to download a good chunk of the game. Like, they went with a small cartridge there, so does the extra 10 ensure that we get a 32 gigabyte cartridge? If so, some people look at it and say, you know what, it's better than what we had with 11, don't necessarily mind it so much. But it could also be seen as maybe, from WB's side, future-proofing a bit, because this is going to be a game that goes on for years, and most likely it will end up going into the Switch 2 or the next generation device from Nintendo, its lifespan, where they'll probably want to sell this there too. So maybe just establishing that $70 price tag right now. And I mean, if there's backwards compatibility with the current Switch, you'd buy the $6 version, pop it into your new system and bypass 70. So to me, we might start seeing this more and more from third-party developers and publishers as they themselves are thinking about the next 12 to 18 months when Nintendo could just make the big shift to $70 as it is. But I'm pretty excited about Mortal Kombat 1 while we didn't see gameplay yet. And I mean, we have 4 months to release, so I assume there's only so many events where they could showcase it, which to me, Summer Game Fest seems most likely to just get a look at 4 or 5 minutes of a fight going on or something, or Who knows? Maybe they have their own Mortal Kombat Direct at some point and they just sit down and play it on stream for a bit. But the concept, the idea of cameo fighters, the rebooting the entire thing, it's interesting. So yeah, I'm on board with this one and I will be checking it out day one when they release it. And I'll certainly be checking out that Switch version as well, because that is going to be probably the most intriguing addition just to see how it turns out. We already figured the PS5 and the Xbox Series version is going to look really good and probably run really well. But what about the portable version of the game? I guess we'll find out. Next up, let's talk about Sony, a Q&A they had with investors and their mention of Nintendo and their strategy that they have currently employed, especially with the Super Mario movie. We can see this posted up over on Twitter from Genki, who says Sony CEO Kenichiro Yoshida went to watch the Super Mario Bros. Movie. He said it's a beautiful and wonderful IP. He played Mario intensely 30 years ago. A lovable IP can survive 30, 50, or 100 years. That is something we would like to make investment into for sustainable growth. Now, this can be seen during the kind of the webcast that they did. It's a video they posted up over on their investors relations page at about the 82-minute mark, when they're kind of asked about the entertainment side of things and their thought process 10, 20, 30 years into the future. And it does seem like Yoshida, when he's mentioning the Super Mario movie, he's mostly talking about just Mario in general, kind of reflecting on how long it's really been around and how popular it still is. Also, think about The Legend of Zelda. I mean, that was on the NES, like during the 80s, a long time ago. Here it is now, breaking records, 10 million copies in 3 days. Nintendo's very good at taking intellectual properties they've built up for decades and continue to reinvent how they operate. And Mario is basically now the Mickey Mouse of video games. And yeah, Sony kind of wants something like that themselves, because as is mentioned here, it can withstand the test of time and just continue to be very lucrative really for the company. Now, they mentioned making investment for the future, the idea of having a franchise that's so widely beloved, basically, that 30, 50, 100 years down the line, it's still relevant and, yes, lucrative for the business side of things. And it does make me wonder if they believe they have that like on their roster of characters or intellectual properties now, or if they feel like they have to make an entirely new character to kind of line up with what Mario's been able to do this entire time. And it's hard to say, because you think of PlayStation, Kratos, right? Like from God of War, sure. You could think of Joel or Ellie from The Last of Us, Ratchet. But that big Mario character that is part of the mainstream wide-reaching audience, I don't know necessarily, because a lot of the games, yes, are mature rated and stuff, and that kind of cuts off some of the reach. And Spider-Man, that's one that people think of, but Spider-Man isn't Sony's, it's Marvel. There's a whole agreement and deal there for the games, and then Sony has like the rights for the movies. So I almost wonder if they look around and think that they have to make a new character or franchise, or if they could invest in something like Astro. Astro's kind of cool. And Astro is on everyone's PlayStation 5. If you have a system, you have Astro's latest game. So to me, it's not a bad idea to double down on a character like that with a new big 3D game that's not necessarily just tied to VR, but something tells me Team Asobi's going to show up in this showcase coming up, and we'll get the next Astrobot, and you'll need the PSVR 2 headset to play it. While that'd be, I'm sure, a good game, I would like to see them spread their wings a bit and maybe build off of what they had with Astro's Playroom, but something more on the level of a Mario Odyssey even. So I'm crossing my fingers for that one, but interesting stuff from Sony, even referencing and talking about Nintendo at their investors meeting. Next up, let's talk about Nvidia and a couple of video cards that they have now unveiled. This is their 4060 series, and it didn't go over the best online necessarily. We can see this posted up by Ars Technica. It says Nvidia introduces $399 RTX 4060 Ti and $299 4060 without introducing a price hike. So the biggest thing here, going from the 30 series to the 40 series with no price hike, that's technically a big deal because they do raise the price seemingly every generation. And that's how we're to the point where $499 apparently isn't expensive for a video card, even though back in the day, you could get $200 or less and get decent performance, I would say. But now it's the $1,000 plus video cards have almost become the norm, which is just, it's wild stuff. Now, they have a couple of different cards here, really just SKUs depending on VRAM or edition, like the 4060 Ti. That's coming out May 24th at $400, the 8GB variant. There's also a 16GB variant that'll be coming out, and then also just the 4060. So that's the $300 model as they show here. That one will be out in July, along with that 16GB 4060 Ti. The thing that really caught people's attention are the spec sheets for this. It doesn't look great on paper. It's kind of odd, actually. If you look up and down the list here of some of the information for it, a lot of it is kind of cut down, and they've mostly moved the boost clock up. But the thing that really surprised people was the memory bus width from, say, the 3060 Ti to the 4060 Ti cut in half. I'm not really sure what's going on here with Nvidia. I know that they are playing into their DLSS with their whole frame generation thing. And when you look at their comparison to the 3060 Ti and the 2060 Super, the big bar they want you to look at that's bright green is using the frame generation. And sure, like that looks impressive. But then you look at the standard, like just the regular with that off. What, a 15% increase over the 3060 Ti? It just kind of feels like a lateral move, I guess. It really just, at this point, they're banking on the features of DLSS that'll get it over the finish line and people will be all about picking it up. But I mean, one, it's not going to actually be that price anyway when it comes out, since we know prices go up in like the aftermarket and stuff. And two, it seems like an easy one to either hold off or just buy a 30 series card that you're hoping people start unloading now as they look towards this 40 series, and you can get a good deal on maybe even a 3070 or something there. So unfortunately, not really that enticing, I would say, at this point for the 4060 series. And again, it seemed to really turn a lot of people off with Nvidia, as I guess they're trying to work to the budget pricing, but the jump in terms of performance just isn't there. And yeah, I still miss the days of, what do we say? We'll say the RX 480, when that dropped from AMD, that was impressive stuff at $200. Really haven't had that feeling since then with these different video cards. But if you're looking for a new one, maybe you're upgrading from like a 1060 or something, yeah, you can look towards the 40 series. Again, that happening next week. Otherwise, wait till July for that $299 model. Oh, also, wait for independent benchmarks. Nvidia is trying to show some off here. They always boost their numbers and try to show you best case scenario. Look for some of the independent reviewers on YouTube or different websites to give you the real picture. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and the Nintendo Switch when it comes to the sales side of things, as we did have the Famitsu sales charts come out, which we'll start over here with the top 10. With The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom at the top, 1,119,502. By the way, Nintendo told us that they had sold 2.24 million in Japan. This kind of reflects a 50% digital ratio. So yeah, even in Japan, you can kind of see how that's trending towards the digital side of things when it comes to game sales. Number 2 is, that's Mario Kart 8, all right, fine. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, 9,709. Who needs the next Mario Kart game? 8 Deluxe will live on forever. Then we have Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. That got a bit of a boost, actually, 7,335. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Hogwarts Legacy, Minecraft on the Switch, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Splatoon 3, and Mario Party Superstars. Moving over to the hardware for the Switch, 83,052. To be honest, I kind of thought it'd be higher than that. I thought it would have at least broken into the 100,000 some odd mark, but it's actually down from last week about 5,000 units. Maybe they're having issues with stock because Zelda's out and people have been rushing to buy the Switch. Hard to say from here, but definitely lower than I was expecting. I mean, we figure most people who want a Switch have one and they're just going out to buy Zelda, and that's kind of reflected in the 29.1 million Switch systems that have sold in Japan alone. The PlayStation 5, 41,444. The PS4, 787. The Xbox Series, 275. And the 3DS hanging in there with 51. It's also worth mentioning the Switch had a pretty good April in the MPD for the US. Matt Piscatella shared that PlayStation 5 was the best-selling hardware platform in dollar sales during April. While Switch led the market in units sold, PlayStation 5 leads the 2023 hardware market year-to-date across both units and dollars. So it's possible people were getting kind of hyped up for the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom coming up in May, and we did have that Zelda-themed Switch that came out, so that most likely played into some of the statistics here, but I kind of figured Zelda would have pushed the Switch a bit more. It's just, you get to the point where everyone kind of has a Switch, and I mean, the system has sold incredibly well at this point, but that's kind of why I think they're going to have a harder time getting to that 15 million unit projection as they talk with investors, that it would be a stretch. If Zelda's not pushing units like that, I don't really think Pikmin 4 will, or really anything else that could be left in the tank for Nintendo for this generation. So that's one of the reasons I think maybe 2024, especially running up to holiday, we start hearing talks about next gen, and I am really curious to see which way Nintendo takes this entire thing after the Switch. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, if you're buying Mortal Kombat 1, which system are you getting it on? PlayStation 5, 49%, there you go. The Xbox Series, 18%, the Switch, 17%, and the PC, 16%. I also am thinking maybe some people will buy it on the Switch and then also on another platform, because there's cross-play and cross-progression. And back in the day, we used to have tournaments at the store, at different stores, and I think it was Tekken. One person would show up with their PSP and practice while they're waiting for their turn, because Tekken on, I think it was the Xbox, maybe the PlayStation we were playing it on, was basically the same in terms of timing and frames as it was on the PSP. So if you're really into Mortal Kombat, maybe you're getting it on both the Switch and then maybe the PS5 or the Xbox Series or even PC, and then you can kind of practice while you're on the go or even hanging out at a tournament. But yeah, exciting stuff for Mortal Kombat 1 coming up, but looks like the PS5 is the lead platform for this poll. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Jay, who says, as an Overwatch 1 fan, it is pretty disheartening to see the current state of things. Personally, I was very excited for PvE, and it kept me and most of the remaining player base going during a 3-year content drought. Then late last year, we get the early access of Overwatch 2 PvP with the promise of PvE later down the line. Definitely improved situation, but not the promised revitalization for the game either. I think a lot of the players have been cutting the dev team slack because the assumption was that half the team was working on PvE. Now we learn that during this same period, they already decided to abandon PvE while still marketing PvE and using it as an excuse for new heroes and maps. But now I realize that what we have gotten so far with Overwatch 2 is the full dev team working on the game. Season 6, they will roll out this stripped version of PvE, and we shall see what a 5-year wait has brought us. It will likely determine how much of the old player base will stick around. That's the big thing I was taking away from the comments about Overwatch 2, was just the marketing, the build-up, really the explanation for Overwatch 2 in general was this PvE mode that they were building up on the way to release, and then they're cutting it out and doing this mission mode PvE stuff, essentially not what they were selling people on. And to me, people just seem to like the lore of Overwatch and the idea of having stuff that kind of digs into that a bit more, with more cooperative play against just player versus the computer, horde mode, anything like that, is what people were really looking for outside of just the typical Overwatch like game loop. I do wonder if they would consider just having other teams, not necessarily the one that works on more the competitive side of things with PvP, just work on spin-off titles for Overwatch, focusing on one character or another. And again, I'm not really that into Overwatch, so maybe they have done that, but it seemed like they were trying to line up PvP with PvE, and the mechanics, according to them, weren't transferable from one to the other easily. So there's like, that's it for PvE, we're going to move on from it. But I think there's a lot more they could do on the other side of it with PvE if they're able to detach it completely from the whole PvP thing and just make full-fledged titles around different characters or events in the lore. But we'll see if they're able to do anything with that. For now, though, it looks like they have their sights set on the next season with PvE missions. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Mortal Kombat 1, the big reveal. Are you excited for it? What did you think about the idea of a reboot playing off of Mortal Kombat 11's ending? And then also, what about the RTX 4060? Are you interested in these, or are you gonna kind of pass on them for now? And then Sony talking about the Super Mario movie and how they want to have their own intellectual property that can stand the test of time 30, 50, or even 100 years from now. Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.